I'm invincible. I'm paying money. The girl's happy. She's got no money. I got my rocks off. Oh, how good is this?
Good morning and welcome to Bound for Glory on SYN. My name's Ashley and I'm here with
Ethan Meldrum, Matt Joyce,
Ben Kazupi
and Peter Williams.
We've got a big show today. It's our first live show back. We're going to talk all things AFL. We're going to look at all the games played over the weekend as well as preview the games today, and we also have an interview with Ben Sinclair.
Very exciting.
Collingwood forward. He played all right yesterday and it's a good interview with him. Yeah, I think we'll lead off from there. How good is Travis Cloke?
He is quite a good player.
I'm sorry, I don't want to start on such trivial terms or something that we already know, but he's a fantastic footballer when he gets rolling. Last year, it seemed as if, and it's pretty trivial again to blame it on contract issues, but he is worth every cent in my opinion when you've got a forward down there who can just create, not only take marks, but hit a pack hard and the ball spills and gives those really quality Collingwood smalls a chance to dominate. And yeah, he didn't even need to just he took the marks yesterday, and that's what really got Collingwood over the line in the end.
Well, Alex Francis is a very good defender, as we know. He's probably come close to All-Australian selection at times, and Cloke made Rance look silly at times yesterday, and he just monstered him. And
it's really the exact matchup that Rance doesn't like. The Cloakes, the Tex Walker, and the Drew Petries. He just can't play on them, and I would have thought that's why we recruited Troy Chaplin, and he didn't do it. I don't know if that was Hardwick's decision, or if it was... I think it was Chaplin that moved himself onto Cloke after he had 3 goals kicked on him, and that was kind of ridiculous.
Well, going on that, Cloke kicked 4 goals in the third quarter, which was absolutely fantastic, and it was integral to get Collingwood over the line in the end. And he also, for the whole game, kicked a career-high 7 goals, so he was definitely on fire yesterday.
Well, it was basically that 20-minute blitz that Collingwood had where they kicked 7 goals or 8 goals to nothing. Yeah. Like, Richmond wouldn't even score. It was fantastic to watch.
As you're saying, that third quarter blitz, midway through that third quarter, Richmond had, I think, at the 15th or 16th minute mark, only had 1 tackle to the quarter.
Yeah.
And Collingwood players were able to... They kept pushing the ball forward and they kept pressing. Whenever Richmond tried to move the ball out or did get back control of the ball and they looked like slowing the game down, Collingwood always pressured the next kick or pressured the next disposal, and they just never got going. And Collingwood, with all their quality ball users and really good contested players with strong bodies, they just got front and square and they kicked those goals and they kicked away.
And I guess it helps when you've got that sort of
contested
forward up front who you can have a couple of guys hanging off him and he still somehow marks it.
Yeah.
It's amazing how many players that can just be right with him and somehow he takes a mark.
Well, it was Sidebottom yesterday. He kicked 4 goals and he was fantastic.
He was. And I think more of the story of the day, rather than Richmond crashing back down to earth, was Collingwood's dominance, to be honest. I mean, there aren't many sides that could stop them the way that they were playing in that third quarter.
And this is a team missing Dane Beams, Nick Maxwell, Darren Jolly. It's a fantastic... Luke Ball as well. Fantastic unit to watch. And once they get those 4 players back and once their injuries are settling, they're going to be a fantastic team to watch, and they're really going to push hard in September.
Dane Swan, the 200 gamer, had an absolutely fantastic game as well. He had 35 disposals for the day, so he was had a really good game.
A good way to celebrate a milestone, wasn't it?
Definitely. And it's a real credit to Collingwood structures, just the way that they played. I mean, Richmond scored, I think it was at the third quarter mark, they had 8 goals at the time, and 5 of those were in red time, so in the last 5 minutes, and they were goals that Collingwood really shouldn't have given away. So there were only 3 goals in general play that Richmond kicked for 3 quarters, which is quite ridiculous.
I mean, just on that general play, you saw all these Collingwood players, especially in the third quarter, and it sort of started in the second, but the third quarter was when they did the most damage. There were a lot of Collingwood players that moved to half forward and they were just in space. They took a lot of uncontested marks, had a lot of uncontested disposals, and that allowed them to have, midway through the third quarter, they had 15 marks inside 50 for the game. That's if you allow the opposition to get 15 marks inside 50 midway through up to in the whole game, midway through the third quarter, you've practically conceded it because you've just given them that many shots on goal.
And over half of them would have been Cloak, probably.
Yeah.
And that allowed Collingwood to have 8 unanswered goals in the third term, so Richmond really needed to pick up their game, and as you said...
Yeah, but if, as a Richmond supporter, if you would have said we were 3-1 to start the year, I would have taken it with both hands and ran, and we've got a healthy percentage as well, and games like this is kind of a wake-up call. Players might have been getting ahead of themselves, and it gives players like Nick Floston, Ben Griffiths, Brad Helbig, even Oren Stephenson a chance to come into the side.
And how bad was the goal kicking in the first half? It was shocking from both teams. So many shots. I guess Marek in particular, a couple of the Pies players as well that just missed sitters.
Yeah. Well, Jamie Elliott's normally a reliable goal kicker, and he kicked 1 goal 3 yesterday. So.
Yeah, and I wonder how he was affected because he was out and they had to take him off and everything like that. Which, by the way, Morris shouldn't be suspended. They're trying to talk that one up. But
Seriously? I'd be happy with that, not getting suspended.
No, he won't. He shouldn't.
He shouldn't, but he'll get a week.
Well, he did a second incident as well where he jumped backwards.
That shouldn't be suspended either.
So I think he'll get at least a week.
Who knows?
I wouldn't suspend either of the bumps, to be honest. But then who knows with the match review? They might get 8 weeks.
Yeah.
He shouldn't get it.
I still notice he's sliding for the ball. He hasn't realised that there's been a rule change. I don't think a lot of players have realised that, but he's one who'll be massively affected.
I don't think a lot of players understand it.
I don't understand.
Or umpires.
I don't understand the rules anymore.
Or even Kevin Bartlett, maybe.
Let's not forget all the melee fines. You can't go a Collingwood-Richmond game without a melee. It happens every time. I was just waiting for it going, there's going to be a melee.
When's it going to happen? And Jake King would have been in the middle of it, probably taking on Cloak or Lynch or something like that. So it was quality viewing for sure. Yeah.
Something that could be... a lot of people don't know where that was quality viewing would be press red for Ed on Foxtel. Who tuned into Eddie's commentary yesterday?
Well, I did, and I treated it the way that it should have been treated, as a good laugh. That's all.
It was 3 grown men on air wetting themselves with joy, especially that third quarter when Harry O'Brien kicked that goal.
And you got to remember, when one of them would be like, hey, that shouldn't have been a free or something, the others would be like, no, we're meant to be biased, it was just a piss take, and it was enjoyable because it was supporters. So.
Do you think that that's the sort of thing that'll start to happen for more teams?
No.
Or do you think it's like a one-off thing?
It's just Collingwood.
Just Collingwood?
Yeah.
Because it's in the US and in the UK, they do that sort of thing where the home team always gets their own call.
And they also do that when Malcolm Blight commentates golf. So that's on a normal.
And Paul Roos with Sydney games.
I think on that note we should move on to the next game. Last night, Carlton got their first win on the board. Finally happened under Mick Malthouse. They defeated the West Coast Eagles.
It's a bit easier to get the win when they're 3 goals 17 or whatever West Coast were. Speaking of abysmal goal kicking, that was woeful.
West Coast are out of sorts at the moment.
It's a bit weird. I don't know what it is. Is it structural? Is it a personnel thing? I'm just haven't seen enough of them to be sure just what it is.
Well, it's certainly not personnel because we know they've got the players. They've got a fantastic midfield and they've got a dangerous forward line, even with the loss of Lynch to Collingwood, who played well yesterday. I think we should note that. Yesterday, the goal kicking, it wasn't too bad considering they had 9 rush behinds. 7 goals 14 you probably want to improve on, but...
And I was going to say, Kennedy held goalless as well. For that.
Michael Jamieson was fantastic last night. He wasn't just spoiling, he was plucking contested marks from the back line, which is something that's very hard to do, and it's a trademark for a top-notch defender.
I think...
So go ahead.
No, you were saying?
Cox as well. Cox had no impact on the game, and it was really good to see Warnock, stamp his place in the team.
Considering Cruiser was out, that's a big win for Carlton.
Yeah.
So.
If they can get those two working in tandem, and I'm not sure if you can play them in the same team. Maybe you can.
Just get rid of Hampson.
Well, they're playing.
We'll find out. So and I think just on that, Malthouse last night, I felt as if there was something different about the game plan. I felt as if they used, and Carlton usually play well in Perth. I think it's the wide ground. I think that they embrace their own most dangerous attribute, and that's speed. You saw players, Yarran especially, but also Armfield. They were able to run, and it wasn't long bombs down the wings. They'd find a short target and they'd move on quickly. It wasn't, they'd lose the ball in a contest and go out the other end. No, they always made sure they were running on and running with each other.
They've got quite a few WA boys, don't they?
Yeah, they do.
Yeah, so they'd be used to the wide open grounds.
Well, there's Yaron, Garlett, I believe, are both from WA. There's Kane Lucas as well, so there's a few.
Yeah. Particularly their runners.
Yeah, Armfield had a great game. Simpson as well, great at the run and spread. And really, I thought it resembled more of a Ratton game plan than a Malthouse
It did
one.
a little. It was. That's what I was trying to... Is he going back to what the strengths were? Because obviously Carlton weren't as bad a side as what their win-loss ratio last year indicated.
Yeah.
Chris Yaron, he had 10 bounces in the second quarter.
Yeah.
That's unbelievable.
It's ridiculous.
He was on fire. He was running so fast. It was really good to see that the boys were really helping him out. Like you said, you had Armfield shepherding so that Yaron could just have that run and go run into goals, and it was really good to see that. On West Coast, though, an interesting stat. Last year, West Coast only lost twice to Victorian teams at Subiaco, and this year they've already lost twice at Subiaco to Victorian teams. So you can see that there's a clear difference. Subi might not be their, danger spot
No, it just
as it
means
has
that
been.
they're going to win every other game there this year. It's fine.
Possibly.
And it's really weird to see them 1 and 3 as well. West Coast.
So strange.
And who's the best 1 and 3 side in the competition now? I mean, you've got Carlton, you've got West Coast, North might be 1 and 3.
One of GWS and Melbourne.
But here's an interesting question. West Coast play Port at Amy next week.
That's going to be a cracking game.
Who goes in
right now.
favourite, do you reckon? Who is...
I'm going to say West Coast.
I'm going to pick Port. What a scene of
I'm
Port.
tipping Port.
They've picked
On form, it's
They
Port.
haven't played, obviously, quality opposition bar Adelaide, but the way they're playing, and we'll get onto the Port Adelaide game soon, but they're spreading their midfield well. And if Port Adelaide spread their midfield as well as Carlton did last night, West Coast they're going to have a really tough fight on their hands.
Well, that's something we'll discuss later, of course, when we review the Port Adelaide versus Gold Coast game. But West Coast last night, it just was like the hunger wasn't as much there, which is weird because they've only been a top team for 2 years now, basically. And it's weird because their midfield isn't performing. Someone like Andrew Gaff, who's young, should be running as hard as he can because he's a young player, he can do that, especially on a big ground like Patterson Stadium. He only had 14 disposals last night, which is well below his standard. Josh Kennedy's well held goalless. I thought you could have gotten a fair bit more out of him because he's a fantastic forward as well.
They still have quite a few out. Rosa, Wellingham and Natanui off the top of my head.
Rosa back will definitely help.
Yeah,
And Class playing basically with a dislocated shoulder or whatever it was. It was quite ridiculous. He couldn't take a grab with his hands outstretched. It was very interesting to see. And I mean, you can't blame Kennedy entirely. I mean, the delivery to him was crap all day. And he's shown that he's a great player so far this year, and to still salvage some team play that he's had this year, he had a good game.
Yeah, he did. Considering, as you said, like the way the ball was coming in, no forward, every forward would have had a tough night at the office. And have they completely lost? Because there were only 5 ball ups in the first half. Have they completely lost that idea of their famed forward press? Because they just didn't look defensively into it.
It was the speed factor. I mean, you've got players like Adam Selwood, who does try hard all day, but he's slow. He is very slow. I mean, he got outrun by Yaron a few times. I mean, it's
that's
a really
that's
fast
fair
player.
enough,
But he was really trailing behind Yaron. It wasn't just, nipping at his heels. It was
I would
really
kind of hope they wouldn't have that as a matchup because it's pretty ridiculous if they did.
That's true. When Sam Butler and Shannon Hurdy are medium defenders, they're not very quick either. And
their speed relies on their ball movement really quickly. Just
Hearn's got a lethal boot though.
Yeah.
That's what his strength is.
And on that note, there was another game yesterday.
Really?
Very interesting game. I know you wouldn't think it, considering the aftermath of it, the end of game press conference, which we'll get onto a bit just after we talk about the match, because I think that was the most important. Essendon, I don't know where I want to rank Essendon yet, and I think it's not a negative way. I think it's positive because I really like how they're playing. They're tackling hard and they're moving the ball well, just like they did at the start of last year, but they're doing it against pretty decent opposition. Obviously the Saints weren't yesterday, but they did it against the Dockers and they did it against the Crows, both away from home.
Not to be the negative one, but could they just be doing a repeat of last year?
I hope so.
I think we'll find out this week.
We will find out.
4 days now.
Because people have been throwing around the top 4 thing, and I don't think at any
they were
stage...
pushing it around last year as well, so...
Exactly.
And that's what I want to wait for, a greater sample size of their game. But from what I'm seeing so far, it's very positive from Essendon's point of view. There's a lot of fringe players. Myers has been really good. He's someone I've noticed that he struggled obviously to get in the team last year. He was, I think, one of those required wet weather players, those in and under, but he's been able to spread wide. And if you can get the most out of those players offensively that are usually either defensive or in and under, that's fantastic.
And they've lost now Hurley as well for 2 weeks,
which is unfortunate.
And he was quite good yesterday
He
as well.
was.
He only had 13 disposals, but I think he had something like 10 score involvements, which is
add that with
pretty damn
Ryder and their forward lines. Like obviously Ryder rotating through the ruck, but their forward line, if you lose two of their key tools who can really kick goals, take big marks, they're going to struggle.
And even David Hill played well yesterday.
He did. Well, speaking of tall forwards and that sort, Scott Gumbleton came in late in for the game. He had a really good game. Essendon fans, don't get ahead of yourselves. I mean, St Kilda probably has the shortest defence in the league.
Yes.
And they had Jason Blake as an omission as well, which was baffling given the style of forward line that Essendon employs. Gumby did kick a few goals and it was really good, and he should continue to get a game at least until Hurley or Ryder is back.
He's got the talent.
He does have the talent.
But obviously, as you're saying, the application isn't just there yet. And obviously that's been stifled a bit by injury.
Yeah, and we might even see Joe Danaher for the Anzac Day game.
I'm excited.
He
I
kicked
really
a bag in the VFL against a heavy losing Essendon side against Casey, against your reserves, and against Melbourne reserves.
Casey are really
Finally
good.
beat Essendon.
They're like a top 4 reserve side though, Casey, usually last year.
Can we bring Casey into the competition? Relegate Melbourne?
Swap them around and might actually do okay. But Essendon were impressive yesterday. I think it's a trademark of their game that they have 21 players constantly fighting for the ball and fighting to get out. And they got a lot of classy players as well. Someone like Brent Stanton, who, I mean, he wasn't so efficient, but we know he's a good ball user, and he was getting in the contested stuff as well. He had 11 contested possessions, which is a bit unusual for a player like him. Joe Watson as well was fantastic yesterday. There's probably another 3 Brownlow votes, and he's probably up there in the count once again, he's just in tremendous form.
You could tell that Essendon really went hard at the ball, and they really went for those contested possessions because they were significantly higher than St Kilda's. And you could also tell that there was a lot of emotion and a lot of on the line for this game. Obviously, Goddard's first game against his old club, and post game we saw Goddard break down into tears when talking about his old club. I don't know what to think about that, to be quite honest. How did you guys see it?
If it meant so much to him, St Kilda, then he should have stayed.
Well, he was a life member of the club. He could have stayed on to. No one was really, pushing him out. He had a spot in the club.
It was him.
I can understand thinking for yourself and saying, I want to win a premiership, because let's be honest, it's not going to happen before Goddard retires. St Kilda's not going to win a premiership.
It was a calculated business decision. And at the end of the day, someone who's on $750,000 a year, if the most of your problems is that your mates are in another football jumper, you've got it pretty good in life. I don't understand the sympathy. I can understand the tribalism of football clubs, and I can understand that it's a workplace, but considering the life that you lead is one of luxury, and it's a great privilege to be playing for such esteemed football clubs and an esteemed competition, that I don't understand the sort of it's a bit over the top.
Woe is me, blah, blah.
I know.
Talking to Brendan a few weeks ago, he basically said that the main reason was he wanted to play inside midfielder, and that's something he believed he could do at Essendon, and that because he believed that was what he could have the greatest influence on the match, playing in that position rather than a half-back flank or even a wing. So that was his main decision, and he did say that if he had have left for the money, he wouldn't be at Essendon. So
I mean, he certainly showed he was capable of doing that in the grand final. Him and Lenny Hayes, it was a toss-up of who won in the first grand final against Collingwood, the Norm Smith medal, and he did do that really good, have that really good performance, and it was certainly stand out, and he's really showing at Essendon now that he is capable of playing that role. So you've got to hand it to Brendan the way that he's conducted himself.
Well, he had 6 clearances yesterday, which was equal most for Essendon, so he is very capable of playing inside midfield, and we know he's a very talented player, former number 1 draft pick, of course. almost won a Norm Smith. He was probably one of the best 5 players in the league at that point in his career. So we know he's got the talent, and now he's applying it, and it's fantastic to see.
Make sure you send us in a text on 0427 767 767. I think we might go to some messages now. We'll be back.
Everyone knows Sin Talks music, but who knew Sin Talks sport? Sin is full of exciting and fresh sports content, including the Sports Desk, a bi-weekly hourly sports chat show. You can hear the latest sports news and reviews every Monday and Friday from 9am, with the best sports host Sin has to offer. If you're a sports fan, don't miss it. The Sports Desk, every Monday and Friday from 9am.
Here's a snippet just for you from the Best of Sin's comedy program, In Joke.
In the studio today we have Sammy J. Hello and welcome.
Hello there, and thank you for having me.
Thanks for coming.
I would like to nuzzle Emma Bunton Baby Spice.
Oh, an apple.
Excellent choice.
And Motorboat. Perhaps a good old Labour stalwart, someone like a Ben Chifley from the 50s. Just get down to Bathurst and just give him a big motorboat. Is that why you ask those questions? So you get those horrid little grabs from people that you can put out of context?
Yeah, fantastic, yeah.
Like what you hear? Tune in to In Joke from 5 to 6 p.m. Sundays on Sin, or for more of our good stuff, head to syn.org.au/bestofsin.
Sin, where young people run the show.
In Sin Studios, born and raised on the panels was where we spent most of our days. Chilling out, max, relaxing, all cool.
Tune in to our show now. It's Flashback at Rule with Beth and Freya on Sin. Tuesdays, 11 till 12 midnight.
Australia's longest-running regional queer film festival is on again in regional Victoria, and this year will be number 10.
The Bendigo Queer Film Festival is on for 3 days from the 26th of April and boasts films from Australia, the United States and Sweden.
There's also Queer Country, an art expo showcasing the works of regional queer artists, and an opening night party on Friday night following the film.
Take Friday off work and make it a 4-day weekend, and come and see the fantastic sights Bendigo and Central Victoria have to offer.
Just 2 hours drive from Melbourne up the Calder Freeway.
For more information, visit bendigoqueerfilmfestival.com.au.
Back on Bound for Glory on Sin. Remember to text any thoughts, of course, on 0427 767 767 or on sin.org.au. Hawthorn versus Freo yesterday. It was always going to be an interesting clash to see what Fremantle could do, especially with McFarlane, Sandilands and Pavlich out. 3 players they're 3 most experienced players and probably 3 of their best players as well, against a fantastic Hawthorn unit, as we know. And they overran them in the first quarter. They were fantastic. 5 goals to none.
The moment that the Hawks got the ball out, and this is something that Fremantle didn't get to do well, as they've obviously the centrepiece of the game plan relies on that forward pressure notion that you keep the ball in or you press the ball in and you just create stoppage after stoppage after stoppage, and then you know obviously they've got a really good midfield that wins a lot of contested ball. And what happened was that they tried to press in the first 5 minutes, and that midfield didn't end up winning the contested ball. And because Hawthorn are such a fantastic side, not only by foot, but also they're pretty pacey, they just got smashed on the counter. Like, I was really expected to go on for 4 quarters, but it looked at one stage to get horrendously ugly.
And how good is Grant Birchall? His delivery off the halfback. He's in the top 5 players in the league this year for mine.
On current form,
yes.
This year, so not overall, but he'd be pushing top 20 overall in my opinion. And Matt Suckling out has really given him an outlet to use his run and carry more rather than use Suckling's raking left foot.
Well, it was Suckling who ended up pushing up the field last year, and he hit the scoreboard a fair bit. Now Grant Birchall's starting to do that, and he had 37 disposals yesterday, which was ridiculous for a halfback flanker, and kicked a goal as well. And his ball use is astounding. Yeah, it's so pivotal in Hawthorn's attack forward.
I think what I've noticed about the way Clarko's changed things up a little this year, De Boer went to I'll never get that right, as many other things on this show, but he went to Birchall, and basically what happened was it's as if Birchall got to push up the ground, and it seems they're starting Mitchell not in centre bounces. I've noticed it's either Lewis and Burgoyne are ahead of
Mitchell in the chain,
and he's almost been pushed to half back. And I don't want to say it's a Luke Hodge role, but it's as if that they do have someone who's a pretty good kick of the football and an accumulator behind the ball, and that's helping them. And it was obvious yesterday that, considering the way Fremantle try and keep it in their half of the ground, he was there winning it and getting it out. The clearances were 7-1 in the first 15 minutes of the game, and he was obviously involved in that.
And I think really they've just switched Burgoyne and Mitchell around because Burgoyne's classic role is that one-off half-back, and he might be able to impact the game more in the midfield, and he certainly did kick a couple of goals in the game, so it was very impressive. And Hawks are 3-1 now, 3 huge wins. Like, they've basically only played top 4 sides so far. Huge wins against Collingwood, Freo and West Coast was away. And even, Tasmania's not a home ground for Hawthorn. And really the only traditional loss to Geelong was marring their record. So you've got to think that they're really premiership favourites at the moment.
And that loss to Geelong was very narrow. It wasn't, Geelong were lucky to win that one. Also, it was really good to see yesterday Roughead and Franklin working together again. They had almost identical games. Roughead had 21 disposals, Franklin 20, both kicked 4 goals. So it was really good to see them both up and about. And when they're both working really well, they're a really powerful duo that are hard to control. Speaking about Tasmania, there was only a crowd of 12,600. Now, if that was played in Melbourne, there would definitely have been a bigger crowd.
30 at the G.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And according to BT, though, it was a fantastic crowd down there.
What's the capacity of Aurora?
20,000?
It's 20.
A bit over. I think it's 21 or something, but the surface and the oval itself are, very nice. But who's going to go out to watch a Fremantle game? That's the thing, especially with Ross Lyon coaching it. It's coming for you, Ross. But Luke McFarlane was a huge out for Fremantle. Yeah. You've got a first gamer in Tanner Smith that had to try and fill his shoes and take on one of Buddy or Roughhead, which is a massive ask. And if you've been listening to Bound for Glory in the pre-season and the season so far, you'd know that we think that Luke McFarlane is Fremantle's most important player. I mean, because they don't have cover for him.
Yeah, if you take out the best defender, best forward, and number 1 ruck of any team, they're going to struggle because they're arguably the 3 most important positions, like the keys.
And they're the keys. And with a Ross Lyon game plan, we saw Ross Lyon at St Kilda. He took some very, very average footballers to 2 grand finals or 3 grand finals actually. But it's as if when St Kilda had that year where they lost Rewalt for something like 15 rounds, they still were on top of the ladder. And it's just, you need players to come in that are obviously lesser, that aren't as good as the players that are out of the team. And that's what they missed. Those players didn't stand up, and when those players don't stand up in Ross Lyon's system, things start to fall apart. That being said, the system is very good. I think that I rate it very highly. The way they're able to attack on the counter is second to none. I think when they apply the pressure required, it's second to none. I still think Fremantle have a very good chance to finish top 4 this year. I know I'm going very early, but I think if they can get either those lesser players to stand up or those quality players to come back in the team and play that role, they are going to be very hard to beat, regardless of where they play.
Why wasn't Zach Clark playing? That's the thing I want to know. It seems like he's 4th down the pecking order, even behind Jack Hanna, which is kind of ridiculous.
We know how Ross Lyon has this thing where he's got players he favours and players that favour, in his system. And it's just like Luke Ball got almost turfed out of St Kilda the way he left because he wasn't
60% game time in the grand final when he was best on ground, which was kind of ridiculous. You lost them a grand final, Ross. I'm not going to get on.
Don't tell Brendan Goddard that. Whatever you do.
Yeah, they miss those players, and it seems as if they fall apart. And he's got certain players he favours over others, and that's just the way Ross rolls.
That's how I roll.
It's true. I mean, I don't see any other coach in the league that who's that confident in the way that his really good system, admittedly it's a very good system, works, that he can cut quality players from a side and still say, no, I back this system. I think if X isn't playing good enough or up to his potential, I'm going to give someone else a go.
And he is one of the top 3 or 5 coaches in the league, in my opinion. Just
top 2.
Top 2?
Him and Clarkson.
Yeah, Clarkson's definitely in my top. I'd say top 3 for Lion, even though I don't like you, Lion. I'm going to put you in my top 3. Yeah, I mean, you saw it at St Kilda with Robert Eddy getting games and stuff like that.
Farron Ray.
Yeah, Farron Ray.
Clinton Jones.
Good, hard.
Clinton Jones was good yesterday.
Yeah, he was very good.
He can tackle.
He's a decent. He's a very good tagger.
Yeah.
Not a Dempster tagger, but he's a very decent tagger.
Yeah.
On that note, there was another game last night. I'm not sure how many of you watched it because we're all yelling at Channel 7, but I've flicked over occasionally. Port Adelaide played the Gold Coast. Port Adelaide are sitting in second.
That's crazy, isn't it?
They might
Did
be
anyone,
first next week.
Anyone predict that?
No way.
We all.
Serious, they might be first.
I'm sure we all predicted a natural improvement on last year, but I know they haven't played again. They haven't played obviously.
Well,
a lot of quality opposition.
Have been against the bottom 3 seed.
But Adelaide was a good win. I thought there'd be either 2-2 or 3-1 by now, depending on the Melbourne game, which was going to be was meant to be a coin toss.
Well,
really.
I thought they were going to lose the Melbourne game.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. So did I at first, but I thought they could win it, and I knew they'd beat Gold Coast and GWS, but I didn't think they'd beat Adelaide.
Tip Port Adelaide for that one. but the thing I've noticed most about Port Adelaide is that their fitness, with Darren Burgess, the acquisition of him from Liverpool, who we know is quite a big...
that's a massive game.
That's a massive acquisition, and they just look so much fitter than Gold Coast yesterday. Gold Coast, they're doing well in the clearances, they do well in the scrappy stuff. They got good records in contested ball and clearances this year. But Port Adelaide on the spread were absolutely incredible. Their ball use was good, but they're running between players, between stoppages. Gold Coast just couldn't keep up, and that's what led to that dominant quarter. They kicked 9 goals to 1. They had 52 more disposals and 20 more marks, and this is an efficiency of about 85%, which is ridiculous. That's
in any professional football game. That is ridiculous.
Could Port make top 8? Do you reckon?
They can.
They might make 8. Do they play? They would have to play the bottom few sides again, wouldn't they?
Yeah, they do.
You could have a good total up another few wins, and then if they have a couple of upsets, they could get to the 12, 13 wins.
But this is the thing. I also think against quality opposition, they're better. If you look at that midfield, when you put players and they're playing well above their games played, Ollie Wines and Wingard, they were fantastic. They've been fantastic the first 4 weeks of the season, but if those guys are able to play well, that frees up the attention that happens to Hartlett and Boak, who are good footballers as well. And Hartlett almost is thriving in a system where the tag is going elsewhere or the attention at the contest is going elsewhere.
And I'm going to go on a little, not a rant here, but a rave, really. I mean, if you play any sort of fantasy football, you could literally be beating 70% of people if you auto-filled your team with Port Adelaide players. The improvement's been that ridiculous. You've got Kane Corns, who's
shows
back
up
to
in
his
fantasy
best.
footy. That's how good it is.
Yeah, well, you've got Kane Corns, who's back to his best, averaging something ridiculous. Travis Boak embracing the captaincy. Hamish Hartlett back from injury and doing very well. Angus Monfries moving over from Essendon. Chad Wingard, Ollie Wines, Pittard, Heath, Stevenson, and Justin Westhoff, who is, again, like Grant Birchall, not overall, but this year he's in the top 5 players in the league.
Isn't he number 1?
In fantasy, but I mean in playing, gameplay.
Yeah.
Football.
Top 5.
Yeah, the real thing.
Football. Top 5. And, what a revelation. You don't have a matchup for him. Just going around the panel, who at Carlton, Ash, would match up on Justin Westhoff to play against him?
We don't have any key position players, so I wouldn't really go into that.
Well, you'd probably go Henderson, wouldn't you?
And Melbourne.
They don't have any players.
At Melbourne, I didn't see the Melbourne Port Adelaide game round 1, but I'd say Tom McDonald.
At Richmond, I would probably put Rance onto him, and that's giving up a lot of height. How about North?
Considering the back line isn't that tall at North Melbourne, probably Scott Thompson, but Scott Thompson is the best defender at North Melbourne's back line.
And then you've got Jay Schultz to
I know,
worry about.
And obviously that'd be Nathan Grimer's job, but obviously Grimer hasn't been back to his best. He's been injured, but he's playing really good football, and I know it's not against good sides.
Well, if he was available, I'd say Lockie Keefe, but otherwise I'd say Ben Reid.
Does he have the endurance to go with him, Keefe? I mean, that's Westhoff's thing. It's the gut running. So, I mean, he's really...
Yeah,
I hate to make this Richmond, but he's playing the Matthew Richardson role. And he is. He's a utility. He's drifting forward. He's playing along the wing, and so expect him to get robbed of the Brownlow this year.
And on that note, this is the question I want to ask you. Is Hinkley turning water into wine? Or are these players finally...
Do not make that pun.
Or even... Are these... No, I wasn't. And you went there and you did it anyway. That's your fault. No. This is the question. Is he turning water into wine, or are these players finally, like Westhoff, finally living up to their potential?
I think they're finally living up to their potential, honestly.
Considered they were labelled a basket case last year, I really don't think we should get ahead of ourselves, but they're definitely making progress. I don't think that they'll make top 8, because when you think about last season, you can't really consider top 8 to be the best teams in the league. It's pretty much like a top 12, that's the best. So I don't think they'll make top 8, but, you know, going close to that top 8, I think definitely they have potential.
You think you can get 10th? They can get 10th?
Oh, possibly, but we've got to see, like, it's only we got to remember it's only the first 4 rounds, and they have played, you know, Melbourne, and who else do they play?
GWS Gold Coast and Adelaide, who they always lift for in the showdown. I mean, this week's upcoming game against West Coast it's in Adelaide, is going to be huge. I mean, that's really the... What do they call it? Not the barometer, the liquid test.
Litmus
test. I'm an idiot.
Liquid test.
I'm a biology major, not a chemistry major.
But I think it was a bit unfair to label them basket case as many did last year. I think that was in relation to their off-field issues with their personnel and what have you. I think they always had the talent. It was just the application.
Yeah.
And they played some good footy last year. I mean, they only won 5.5 games or so, and they did have the loss to GWS, but they played some good footy. And
they've
now
almost overtaken that.
They're putting it together consistently, and it's fantastic to see. But I think we better move on to the Friday night game.
We'll quickly run through this. Obviously,
save the best to last.
Best to last.
That first quarter was the best first quarter I've ever seen.
It was the equal 14th highest score in history. 15 goals, sorry, between the two sides.
Absolutely ridiculous. I mean,
end to end,
and immaculate efficiency. Neither team was playing poorly. It was just both teams playing amazingly, and you can't fault that. And then, of course, it ground to a halt, and everyone that jumped on, you know, the betting for over X amount of points got completely destroyed.
I think, just on that note, you saw two really good sides move the ball really, really, really well. It was... You just watch it, and you just, every time the ball went forward, you're like, someone's going to score here. Whenever the ball hit the deck, you have all these good contested players, and Geelong, I mean, we keep waiting for it, the day that it's going to not fall apart, but they're going to weaken. But it's not happening.
They've got this annoying habit of constantly winning. And it's annoying.
Well, you know, the only good thing about them winning a premiership every 2 years is the fact that we know next year they won't win it.
Yeah.
It's an odd year this year, and that's unfortunate because it means...
Should we just go home now?
Just pack up
finish
now.
it, pack up. They've got
I would seriously have Geelong as premiership favourites right now.
So many
people
didn't even consider them for premiership favourites, even top 8, or very low. So it's so
ninth.
I am 4 and 6th, and they're making my expectations of them look just underwhelming.
They're the only team this year that does not have a question mark at this stage. Like every other team, I would say has at least one question mark. They're the only team that I can't fault them.
Well, they've been relatively consistent, haven't they?
So.
And, I mean, Hawkins still kicked, I believe it was 3 goals, despite being a petulant child for 90% of the game. No, he was. It was really grating to see him whine at the umpire and not tackle and not chase. It was, other than that, Geelong were perfect. And the delivery that he was getting, it's a farce that he wasn't, able to capitalise on that.
Yeah. I think we've got some texts in from a good friend of the show, Straw-and-Side. Loving the show, guys. En route from Horsham to Broadford. I don't know where Broadford is. That's obviously...
Sort of near... I think it's sort of near Seymour, maybe, but I might be wrong. Don't hold me to that.
Simpsons gags early this morning. Steve Marsden, I've tipped Port every round and they haven't let me down so far. Yeah, that's true. I've tipped them every week as well. They haven't let me down once. From Mel Lever. Mel, another good friend of the show, expected Port to be 2-2, so very impressed so far. After the Eagles' awful showing against Carlton, expect them to be 5 for a very good in the next 5 weeks and a good chance of making the 8 with 13 wins in the season. No match for top 4, but very likely to play finals, Mel Lever.
And that's coming from an Adelaide supporter, people. So
yeah, that's
you know
very big
not,
raps.
It's not biased.
And I think on that note, we'll go to some Sin messages, and we'll be back with the interview with Ben Sinclair from Collingwood.
That there are more atoms in a glass of water than stars in the universe?
Whoa, Scylla. Mind blown. Especially considering there are more stars in the universe than grains of sand on all of Earth.
Tune in to the Science Hour on Sundays at 3 p.m. to hear more about the wonderful world of science.
The Generation, playing songs from the 60s.
And here's to you, Mrs. Robinson. Jesus loves you more than you will know. Whoa, whoa, whoa.
70s. And 80s. Wednesday nights at 6 on Sin.
Sin's Australian Feature Album of the Week, Rat & Co. 1 Uno Ein.
What started out as a bedroom production for Joshua Delaney of Chet Faker and North East Party House is now the fully fleshed out project that is Rat & Co. Their debut is an instrumental and ambient moody soundtrack.
Listen to the Australian Feature Album Rat & Co. 1 Uno Ein, all this week on Sin.
A side quest is an optional section of a video game and is commonly found in role-playing games.
It is a smaller mission within a larger storyline and can be used as a means to provide non-linear structures to an otherwise linear plot.
As a general rule, the completion of side quests are not essential for the game to be finished, but can bring various benefits to the player characters.
Also non-essential but highly awesome is Side Quests and Sin.
So tune in Fridays at 11 p.m. to hear Side Quest, Sin's home of indie and retro gaming.
You're back here on Bound for Glory on Sin. Text us in with your questions or comments, 0427 767 767. We'd love to hear from you. We'll now take you to an interview with Ben Sinclair from the Collingwood Football Club as I grilled him in the lead-up to this weekend's clash against the Tigers. We're joined here by Collingwood young gun Ben Sinclair. Good to have you on the show, Ben.
Thank you very much for having me.
That's all right. I'll get right into it. There's a lot of debate between Collingwood supporters as to where your best position on the ground is. Can you tell us about the role that Nathan Buckley's assigned to you?
Well, mainly my role is like a defensive forward at the moment, just to put pressure on the opposition backline. I wouldn't mind moving into the midfield in a year or so, but at the moment I'm pretty happy with the role he's given me, so just try and focus on defensive pressure each week, and then hopefully I can get a few goals or something on top of that.
Yeah, do you see the midfield as the place that you'd be playing your best football?
Yeah, I think so. Well, that's where I played my junior football, in the midfield or on the wing, so I wouldn't mind moving up to there, but I just got to improve my fitness a little bit before I can move up there.
Yeah, sure, certainly. And your key attributes from your junior football would have to be your pace and your agility and that sort of thing. Which senior player would you say you model yourself off? Like somebody like Dale Thomas or maybe Harry O'Brien of this year?
Probably a little bit on Dale Thomas, just like sort of trying to get into open space and running up and down the wings, using my leg speed a bit, but I guess don't model my play on one specific player, but I guess he would probably be one of the main ones I do.
Yeah, sure. And did you set any personal goals for yourself in the lead up to the season?
This season? A few goals. Just my main aim at the moment is to play my role in the team, what they ask me to do, but I wouldn't mind playing a fair bit of the chunk of the season, and then obviously trying to gain a bit more confidence each game, and start maybe impacting a bit more offensively this year. So.
Yeah, sure. And I mean, with the decent amount of injuries at Collingwood right now, do you think those goals have changed at all? I mean, you've really got an opportunity to try and cement yourself in the best 22 at Collingwood.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it is. That's the beauty of our team at the moment. It's pretty hard to get a spot, and but with a few injuries, it it is a good opportunity to try and cement my spot. But I'm just going to try and play each week to the best of my ability to play my role, and just see what happens from there.
Sure. And what areas of your game do you think you might need to work on the most? I mean, the things that might keep you out of the best 22 when, the first 22 players like Cracker and Fasolo and those sorts come back?
Yeah, well, I think mainly my probably just taking my opportunities when I get them. Because my role is mainly defensive, I get only a few opportunities to impact offensively, such as kicking a few goals or something. So I guess I've got to improve on when I get those chances and on just taking them. Making sure I can stay in the side.
Do you think that's more of a confidence thing, or that you need to work on, like similar to sort of a Lindsay Thomas scenario, or is it something that just the general method of kicking and that sort of thing that you need to work on?
I think it is a fair bit of confidence. I've done a fair bit of work on my goal kicking and that over the summer and last year, and I feel like I've improved it a lot. And I think it is just a bit of confidence if I get like a few goals here or there, might just ease me a little bit.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so I think the confidence is a bit to do with it.
Yeah, always good to get the monkey off your back.
Yeah, exactly.
And with Collingwood in general, which first-year players would you say have impressed you the most this season so far?
We drafted quite well this year. We've got a fair few good players that have been playing pretty well. A lot of, I think a couple have been put on the long-term injury list with the sickness, and a couple have had a few stress-related injuries, I think. But Ben Kennedy, a young half-forward flanker, has been playing very solid footy in the VFL. So he played, I think, a good NAB Cup game earlier in the year. So I think he'll be pushing for a shot this year.
And the pre-season for them would have obviously been shocking. I mean, when you were drafted to Collingwood, it would have been building up, the fitness and muscle base would have been one of the major priorities. I mean, how hard have you found this aspect of training?
It's tough. It's a very, very difficult few months. But when I first got there, they take you out of a few drills and whatnot to just make sure you get used to it along the way. But it is a very tough few months to get through, but you can definitely see the benefits if you have a full pre-season, just be able to get through the season unscathed.
Yeah, sure, certainly. And I mean, speaking of back when you were drafted and first-year draftees, Mick Malthouse was still coaching Collingwood back then. What would the major differences be between Malthouse and Buckley, in your opinion?
I think I don't know many differences. Mainly, Mick's is a bit more stern with you at times, but I think I enjoyed both coaching styles, and don't really have a preference at all.
And especially in Melbourne, the life of a football, you'd have to say, is pretty. It's in the public domain. I mean, Dane Swan went on record saying that it's pretty easy for footballers to become depressed due to feedback and abuse that gets targeted towards them by the media as well as fans. How would you personally deal with that sort of that criticism and feedback?
Well, I guess because I'm not a massive player at the moment, that I don't get as scrutinised as much as some of the other players. But I can see how it's very difficult to handle when you've got a lot of people on your back at one time. But I think you just got to focus on how the club and everyone inside the club views. So main goal is to try and impress them. So it really matters at the end of the day what people on the outside think of you.
Yeah, sure, certainly. And you've got Richmond coming up on the weekend on Saturday. It's going to be a big game. Have you played in a crowd similar to what's expected? I think it's 80,000 plus that's expected for Saturday.
I played last year in a few big games. I played in Anzac Day, so I've played in big crowds. But I'm looking very forward to this one. This one should be a big game, especially how well they've started the season. So it'll be a good challenge for us to see if we can knock them off.
Yep. Well, best of luck for the weekend there, Ben. Thanks very much for your time.
Thank you very much.
And that was the interview there with Ben Sinclair from Collingwood.
Yeah, one of those footballers, the small forwards at Collingwood, who can take a mark for their size and just cause general damage and chaos up forward.
And he did play well on the weekend, yesterday, and he really wants to stamp his place in the Collingwood side, as, you know, they're really going places.
It's worth noting that his skills have improved heaps. When he first came in, he was missing, just rushing everything, and they've sort of told him just slow down, back yourself, and he's really improved.
As he said, it was a confidence thing, and, you know, similar to Lindsay Thomas, and, he's really focused on improving on that, and, it's looking good for Ben Sinclair.
Speaking of trying to stand out today at the MCG, we'll preview today's games. This is a game I'll be going to later out of just morbid curiosity. Melbourne and GWS.
Blockbuster.
I'm going to right off the bat say this. If Melbourne lose this today, oh, God help them.
What are you going to do, Ethan, if they lose?
I'm going to lie
Take
on
up
my bed in a
badminton.
fetal position, not make contact with the rest of the world for the next month and a half.
Go cuddle one of the monks.
It's just one of those games you can't lose.
I don't think Melbourne will lose.
I don't think they will.
I think they will look at this as a game they have to win for their supporters, for their coach, for their club, for their own dignity, because that's even though it's pretty much gone. Melbourne,
that's what they've stripped down to now.
Yeah, they're down to just, if you don't win this, just pack up and go home. You might as well forfeit the rest of the season because Melbourne, what are you doing?
Casey out, Melbourne.
Yeah, exactly, because they have so much. They've got the potential, but they're just not working hard enough, and this is one they can't lose. GWS have been,
But if it's a close one, if it's a really, really close one, but they still lose, will it be as bad?
Yes,
absolutely.
This isn't one they should lose. They should win this. It's GWS.
They're big-bodied footballers compared to a bunch of 17-year-olds who do have a couple of big-bodied footballers.
And remember, GWS don't have that Ablett who can just tear the absolute game apart. So
Ward is the closest thing.
Mind you, what they do have is players like Ward, as you mentioned. Dylan Shield is in fantastic form. Trelaw, Green, who was fantastic last year, probably hasn't hit his stride as much, but they got the players in midfield that can. They can probably match Melbourne. If they come out with that sort of hunger that the young players generally do, then they will push Melbourne, and it will be a close game. But I think what Melbourne's got to do is they've got to forget about their favouritism at the moment. I believe
are they actually favourites?
Well, they should.
They are favourites.
They are favourites, but I think that's what they got to do. They just got to play to the best of their ability, and the best of their ability should beat GWS. So that's what I'll
Is that who you're tipping? You've just
I'll tip Melbourne.
I've tipped the Giants.
I'm tipping Melbourne just because of the drug scandal factor. Essendon haven't lost yet. So Melbourne, rally! You've got to rally. Stand by Neild.
They're not the type that would rally based on previous evidence.
Not just hang over the fence and give their players shit.
Basically, yeah. Ash?
I'm going to go for the Giants just because I don't know. I just don't see Melbourne doing. They've just been absolutely blown out of the water their other games, so I don't see them doing very well, unfortunately.
And I'm also going Melbourne with this. I just realised Ash went before me, so I'm not going the same as her, but I'm going Melbourne. The next game we've got on is Adelaide versus the Bulldogs. Sadly, I think this is going to be very, very, very one-sided, mainly because Murphy's an omission. And I think Bulldogs have sort of just brought a young team over. They've brought in a couple of debutants who should be really good because Stringer was great last week, same with McRae in the reserves. And I think they'll be competitive to the extent they're willing to tackle and chase, but I think Adelaide will run away with this.
I think it could be closer than we think because just looking at some stats, the Bulldogs have won 4 of the past 5 matches between the clubs, so they obviously match up pretty well. So it might be a bit closer than we expect, but I'm still going to go Adelaide. I just don't see Bulldogs.
Mind you, 4 of those games were when the Bulldogs were top 4 contenders and Adelaide were down the other end of the ladder. But last year, it was halfway through the season or so, Adelaide, the Dogs went to Amy Stadium. They only lost by 3 goals, and they put in a very good performance against Adelaide, who were a top 4 side. There was positions reversed, and the Bulldogs did very well. So I can see it being very close again, because the Dogs are a very good contested side, but I think you got to back Adelaide at home.
And again, you've got no Tippett for Adelaide now, and Bulldogs' weakness again is, I would say, their tall defenders. I mean, Jordan Ruffett's stood up this year, so he'll probably get Tex Walker, but you really can't rely on any of the. Or Dale Morris might do all right, but he's better served being that third tall Dale Morris because his intercept and spoiling is fantastic. So I'm tipping Adelaide. I think this is the easiest game of the round, but that's just my opinion.
I think just overwatching Adelaide the first 3 weeks, they've lost that midfield, that dynamic midfield that crushes opposition. It hasn't got that bite, and they're not working as hard enough. And I consider the Western Bulldogs a fairly decent contested side. I don't consider it... On the outside, they're a bit average, but they can they can push Adelaide if they continue to win the ball. And if they win the ball, and if their midfielders can kick goals, because I still think there's some question marks over that forward line, then, well, you never know.
Yeah, and Nick Lowell will probably go to Dangerfield again, and after getting towelled up by Cotcham, let's be honest, that's not a biased thing to say. He'll want to really, rebound from that after having a great 2 first rounds.
Definitely.
And I think we'll go into the final game of the round there.
Yeah.
North versus Brisbane down at Etihad.
Majak Dor versus Brisbane.
This is a game where two sides that I guess had a lot of hope coming into the season. They've been all right for most parts of a game, but they've sort of drifted out a quarter out, and they've gone
specifically the third quarter.
Yeah. Particularly for North. Brought back
quarter.
some memories of the Port game last year. We all remember that one.
I just haven't decided which book I'm going to bring to the game, or which newspaper or magazine for that third quarter, because it's just... you can't keep dying in the arse every week in that quarter, because it's... you're not going to win a game of football. North Melbourne, in Mick Malthouse's interview last night, I saw a lot of... similarities in the way he answered questions about Carlton's first 3 weeks, the same way you could say about North Melbourne, in that, yes, there is good football being played, but it's not being played for long enough. I think that Cunnington and Zeeble and Wells and Bastanak are starting to support Andrew Swallow, and once that happens consistently, and once that keeps happening, they're going to be a fairly decent side, and they play a game style which is based around attack, and if that attack falls down, they're a little average on defence, but this side can play very good football when it wants to. It's just that it doesn't do it for long enough.
I think if Brisbane can tackle hard and pressure North enough, that they can create that fade that happens in the third quarters, as you mentioned. They get heavily outscored, and they're just not playing it to the best of their ability. And I think if Brisbane can catch them when they do that, they can run out this game victorious. But I think you got to back North.
Yeah, I'm backing North as well. But you've really got to watch. I'm going to be intricately watching Brad Scott at the halftime break in his final message to the players, because he's probably going to just say something really simple like, if you blokes do this to me again, I'm going to lose it. And he loses it at the tiniest of things, so it should be great viewing.
I think it's crunch time for North Melbourne. It's a 4:40 twilight game at Etihad. Everything's going in their favour, so I really think that they have no excuse to lose this one.
As long as the roof stays closed.
Oh, that's exactly right.
It is meant to rain later in the afternoon, so stay tuned for that.
Just shut the roof, guys. If any of the Etihad attendants are listening, shut the roof. Because I think players, and I'm really impressed with Aaron Mullett, by the way, he's playing some really good football.
Fantastic.
He's worked into the back line. That releases Atley to go up the ground, and I think that can work in North Melbourne's favour. I think they'll get it done. It won't be by much, but I think North Melbourne will get it done.
Yep, I think North by about 20 points.
And on that note, we should wrap up our first episode of Bound for Glory.
Like us on Facebook.
And follow Bound for Glory News as well.
I'm invincible. I'm paying money. The girl's happy. She's got no money. I got my rocks off. Oh, how good is this?